Hello, and welcome to the Underground Network. We've been having all sorts of technical issues, like the printer wasn't working, the streaming wasn't working. Anyway, here I am, broadcasting live from LA, totally unprepared today, just going through stuff. But before I start, hammering away on what's going on, I just want to talk about the island I come from, Egina, which seems to be one of there's been an article here in the Guardian. I think I spoke about this before, but I didn't know that Egina was among the 10 top unknown most beautiful islands in the world. So I just wanted to honor the place I come from today. Egina is among the 10 best unknown islands in Europe. The first one being, hold on, let me open that link here. The first one is an island in Norway. The second one's an island in Croatia. The third one being Egina. The fourth one being a German island. So I don't know how legit that list is because, who knows? Maybe a German island, it can be beautiful even though it's like cold. It looks very wild and kind of interesting. It looks like it's off of Germany's Baltic coastline. Yet my island, Egina, comes number 3 in that specific list. In my heart, it comes number 1, and I'm sure many Greeks feel the same about the island they come from. There's another island in this list that is Greek, and it's the island of Samothraki, Samothrace, or probably Samothrace in English, or Samothrace. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. So anyone watching from my island, I just wanted to say hello. My father always says, your home is the place where your, grandparents are being buried. So, very important for me. So anyway, let's move on. What was I saying? Underground Network. Of course, I haven't opened my live. I don't know if anyone is watching. I don't know what is going on today. I don't know if I'm okay. So yes, some people are watching, I guess. To get further into what's going on today, I just want to talk about the IMF today. Just very short. The IMF. So Greece is under an IMF program. A lot is being discussed right now regarding if Greece is going to be able to make the IMF payment due June 5th. Is it going to be able to make a payment? Will it default? Blah, 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 blah. Enough of this. What is the IMF? Who is the IMF? Why do we even talk about the IMF? Why are we even under an IMF program? Let's get back to the basics because we're forgetting what the issue is here. Hi, Maria, you're watching. Hello. So what the issue is here, and I'm going to focus on just a few points. International Monetary Fund. This is based on you all know what the IMF means. For you, if you live in a country that's under austerity and under specific IMF programs. But in short, in the 80s and the 90s, the IMF spread its policies around the world, especially Latin America and Africa, and those countries were subjected to the so-called structural reforms. What a hated word. You can call it structural reforms or structural adjustments. In specific IMF vocabulary, it's structural adjustment programs, SAPs. Really a real horrible world. There is it's neither an adjustment nor a structural one. It's absolute destruction of the economy, and as an extent, if you take this into a more extended picture, this is a catastrophe for an entire society, an entire country. So this is what happened in the 80s and the 90s, and now it's Europe's turn. Those structural adjustment programs, the SAPs, of course, they're part of this neoliberal dogma. You know, this basic ideology, more than ideology, religion that we have now as the predominant religion, a predominant economics religion around the world, spread in the world, dominating the mainstream media. It's worse than a religion, because in a way it promotes itself as being backed by numbers, so as being accurate, and it is the least accurate economic theory we've ever seen. Actually, most economists who are proponents of this dogma, of this religion, dominating religion, so those dominating economists who write articles in the so-called serious media, you know, some of them, they're dangerous, because there is only their voice, and we think as people that, oh, you know, they come up with numbers and their arguments are backed by charts. Yet all these economists, all these neoliberal economists, have failed to predict the crisis of 2008. And even if one looks at Greece, all the predictions regarding Greece have been missing their targets. The predictions were all wrong. Even the IMF itself at some point said, "Oh, we were wrong in some of the predictions. We could not predict the fact that, you know, whatever, the GDP was going to shrink so much, or blah blah blah." This is all bullshit. Of course, they could predict everything. But they've been wrong all the way, and they've been wrong ever since the 80s and the 90s. But to sum it all up, back then the aim in the 80s and the 90s was to extract surpluses from all those countries, and to bring them to at the time what we called the first world. Those countries were called sort of the third world, or third world countries, or countries in development. Later on, they gave it a better name, but basically, the IMF was going into those countries and was doing mainly two things. It wanted, in order to get those surpluses from those countries, it started by cutting deficits. Same old, you know, we have this in Greece. Cut the deficits. You can't have a deficit, as if, you know, a government is like a household. So the idea of back then and still today is that if you cut the deficit, then you will get economic growth. And this is all in what they call macroeconomic terms. So it's something that has like a long sort of if one looks at it, you know, in long term, you know, this is going to be it, and it's going to be good. Meanwhile, you know, basically the idea is suffer now in order to get like a macroeconomic sustainable growth and economy. Of course, all bullshit. Here we are in 2015, and it's a disaster in all those countries, like it's becoming a disaster in Europe. Greece is already a disaster. So some of the economists are openly talking about this, and whoever says that austerity works, because that's what we're talking about, those structural adjustment programs are all basically about austerity. So austerity never ever worked. One of them is what's his name again? Great. Oh, Bill Mitchell. Bill Mitchell says, I have worked in so many countries and I've never ever seen one of these. I've never witnessed development in any of those countries. And so all of you living in Greece, you know that very well. So basically 2 things were being targeted in terms of cutting deficit. The first thing was health, and the second was education. As one understands, these are the most crucial fields for society to be able to live well and to be to live in peace and harmony and be able to sort of prosper. So you make cuts in health, you make cuts in education, you basically destroy the very fabric, healthy fabric of a society, and then it starts deteriorating. So basically those governments in the poorest nations had to introduce very, very harsh cuts and enter those programs, which, by the way, if my memory is correct, out of the 200 or so plus 230, 240 programs that were implemented by the IMF, so in over 200 countries, there were, I think, only about 30 programs which were sort of successful. I think that's not a good program right then and there. So historically, this is a huge failure, but it's a failure for societies and for the people, not for the IMF and not for countries that are basically profiting from it. So these structural reforms have another structural adjustment programs have another aspect as well. It's called enhanced structural adjustment facility, which was a sort of the lending facility for the least development countries. So basically, those programs came with money, and countries were almost forced to borrow that money. Once the IMF got in, it just gave them money through that enhanced structural adjustment facility, ESAF. And through this lending facility, what we got basically, we have lower economic growth, we have rising income and wealth inequality, and of course, cuts in education and health, and that's what you get. You don't get growth, and you just get inequality. Everything that I'm talking about is what people are living today, not only in Greece, in America too, even though, it's not officially under austerity, but all we see is cuts everywhere. So in Africa, it was a disaster because the income per capita just fell abruptly under those IMF programs. So far from helping any indebted country, because usually the IMF goes in, there's already a debt, and then they give more money to supposedly get over the debt and promote growth. But what you do is basically you don't achieve any sort of debt relief. You just increase the debt burden, and the economy shrinks, and then the growth fails to ever come. So no IMF has ever, even though we've had hundreds of failures, so couple hundreds of societies that were destroyed, so a couple hundred of countries that were destroyed. We have never ever witnessed an IMF executive or official or head or whoever is responsible go to prison for malpractice, and one wonders why. Where is the accountability? Who is to blame? Because we're talking about hundreds of countries, so millions of people destroyed, social fabric destroyed, lives destroyed, families destroyed. No one has ever been held accountable, neither have they gone to prison for malpractice. So having those nations being deprived of education and healthcare, but especially education, means you have a less skilled labor force, and that right then and there, your labor force and the education that it could get is your strength as an economy, because it becomes a more productive society, higher productivity, so a better economy. So you, by implementing those programs and by having entire countries inviting the IMF in, and usually at the time it was mainly dictatorships. Today we have the EU to basically help the IMF come into Europe, but by doing that you just target the very tissue that ties a society together. So this is what the IMF is doing. So all the discussion that we have now in Greece is basically, if we're going to pay those people who have been practicing malpractice, who have been practicing fraud over and over again at the expense of entire society. And now we're discussing on whether we are going to be able to make the payment on June 5th. This is an absurdity. This is insanity. Despite the refusal of the Greek officials and Greek governments, consecutive Greek governments, it's not only Syriza, it's also the previous governments, they've always refused the debate. The real debate has started in the Greek society. So the real debate is we can't stop austerity within the euro, and regardless of what the Greek finance minister said the other day on TV, regardless of how much they are refusing that debate, meaning euro versus a national currency, a real national currency, not a parallel currency, a real national currency. They are refusing the debate, but regardless of that, the society is starting to talk by themselves. So it doesn't matter how much you want to silence that issue, dear leaders of Greece or dear leaders of the international neoliberal dogma. It doesn't matter how much you are forcing people to shut up. It's not happening. People are starting to talk, and they're doing it despite your refusal to engage into that debate. Maria says there is a thing called IMF suicides. It's not just suicides in Greece. What are you talking about? I want to hear more. Are you talking about suicides in other countries? Of course. Or are you talking about suicides of IMF officials? I don't think so. I don't think they ever commit any sort of suicides. You're probably referring to suicides rising in countries where IMF programs have been implemented. This is what I believe you're talking about. Hello there, it's a new friend. She just sent a message. European Union doesn't have an army, so if they want to take control of a country, they use soft power, which is the way to control the country through the economy. Yes, exactly. European Union and through the European Commission is doing exactly that. So you have the European Commission, and you have the help of the IMF, and you have the European Central Bank, which is a private institution, basically a private company, who lends to countries through commercial banks. I mean, even the absurdity of that is insane. So a country, in order to do anything it needs to do for its people, for its economy, for anything, a country in the EU, in the Eurozone, needs to borrow with interest through the commercial banks. Then on top of that, you can add, the IMF loans, you can add the previous debt that a country would have, and then you can add the fact that people are being laid off, so there are no revenues. You can add the taxes getting higher. Anyway, it's a disaster. Maria yesterday told me that I should smile more often, and I'm trying, but it's hard. How can I smile with all those things? But, I just went on Twitter earlier on, and I saw that Greece was, Aegina was one of the top islands of Europe, so that made me smile. So I thought I'd start with that, and then again, I didn't smile because I get emotional. I get emotional when I talk about my island. So anyway, I'll stop getting emotional. Just a last glance at Twitter. Important. I don't know how important that is, because I feel that. And I'm going to use a Greek expression, which is the translation of it would be to throw ashes in the eyes of people. There are a lot of dissenters inside the party. So you have all those opposing voices now in the Syriza party. You have the famous opposing voices of Mr. Lafazanis, the president of the Greek parliament, Zoe Konstantopoulou. You have opposing voices now regarding the payment of any sort of debt, whether it's the IMF or the ECB. They are starting to say, hey, we cannot go on like this. So you have all these dissenting voice rising, and that makes people feel better. Look, Syriza is not all bad. The leadership says one thing, but hey, look at all these people from within the party that are opposing voices, and maybe, they represent us, the people who voted against austerity and who don't want to go on with the payment of these debt, the payment of this debt, and the crushing of the society. So people have some sort of hope that those voices can become stronger and will help overcome, basically just liberate what was the beginning of my sentence? Sorry, I'm losing my stream of thought. The society, the people are hoping that those dissenting voices will help them get out of this dead end and will liberate them from the chains of the euro. I have a feeling that that's the last illusion for the Greek people. I don't think those dissenting voices are doing anything or will do anything. I'm not criticizing or I'm not trying to be negative, or I don't want to be pessimistic about it. Obviously, it feels good to have voices that are standing up for the people. My question is, why don't these people join the people? That's if a move like that happens, then I will be convinced that those opposing voices, whether they come from within Syriza or wherever they would come from the current government, I would be convinced that they really mean what they say if they if they join the people and then grow this voice. Other than that, it's just basically to keep the people still, to keep the people under control, because the people right now are boiling in Greece. And you can witness that from you can see through the many articles that you read. You can see through from the many people that are being interviewed on the radio. I mentioned you in the past, many radio stations that I listen to. You can witness that people are boiling. So dissenting voice dissenting voices, join the people, and then we will believe you. I personally have no illusion that I don't think they have, for now, any sort of intention of doing something like that. But when they do, I'll be the first to notice. Don't worry. For now, I don't think there's something going on in that direction. So anyway, that was it for today. Thank you for watching and interacting. Maria says, keep the people sedated. That's what they want to do. Exactly. That's what it looks like. And they also create a lot of division in the society, not the dissenters, but, this is the culture of, I believe, sort of the system, the deeper system being, working really hard to keep the people not only sedated but separated and divided. So let's not forget that, regardless of where we may disagree. I try to keep an open mind and not forget, even with my friends who probably would not agree with me. It doesn't matter. I want to agree on 5 things. So let's not forget that we should remain united. Anyway, that was it for today. Thank you, girls, for interacting. Sorry, a guy just joined. Hello, Aikis. Thank you, girls and boys and girls, for watching and interacting. We should not forget our focus, which is not on how we will pay the IMF, but why the IMF should even exist in Greece or anywhere in the world under programs that are destroying entire countries. Hopefully a new world is possible. It actually is. I'm going to talk about this article. It's called Fundamental Changes Required, and it's a relatively short article and analysis of how you can change things. It's not all dark. It is possible. It is possible for every country, for every economy, to make the changes it needs in order for its society, for its economy and its society to prosper. It is totally possible, totally feasible, and it's this school of thought that has been around for thousands of years if one goes back to Aristotle, but it is seeing a rebirth right now through a number of economists, and they're writing every day, they're giving interviews every day, and they give practical solutions and practical steps. It's not just theory, it's not just neoliberal bullshit. It's A, you need to do that, B, you need to do that. Very, very specific, and they also write about Greece. So I'm, at the same time, these things are really going to shit right now, but at the same time, when one knows that people who are deep into economic science, deep researchers and theorists, and actually they don't call themselves that way, but they're economists who are very pragmatic. So when they lay out all the possibilities, and so you become optimistic. You can only be a pessimistic when you don't know that there's an alternative. But from the moment you know that there is, that tens, if not hundreds, of economists around the world have written about it specifically, in specific terms, even for Greece specifically. So when you know those things exist, you become very, very hopeful, and the only thing that you want is for people to know about these economists. So again, Bill Mitchell, read the article. The full is called Rising Inequality, Fundamental Changes Required. I will post it in the description, but I will talk about this whole article in another show. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. Keep it up, and I don't want this IMF payment to be. I don't want it to be paid. By the way, I have heard of a version. I mean, I've heard somebody Where did I read that? I read so many things I can't remember, but I remember reading that, or hearing or reading that the last payment which Greece made to the IMF, with IMF money, this money that was found in the Bank of Greece. Mr. Varoufakis the other day said, but magically, we found this out of nowhere. We found this account in the Bank of Greece, and Mrs. Merkel seems to have told Tsipras, or Stournaras, the director of the Bank of Greece, told the government that, hey, there's this account here, the IMF account, which you can use. You can use that money from the IMF to pay the IMF. How absurd is that? And this was very much laughed at in the international media. But what's interesting about that is basically Greece used IMF money to pay back IMF installment. Of course, this money was not just taken and given back to the IMF. This money has interest. So it's something like the ELA for the ECB. It's money that has a very high interest. So Greece will pay that money that it took from the IMF in the Bank of Greece account to pay back the IMF. It will pay back that money with high interest. That's one thing. But the second thing, which is more interesting, is that that money basically was given to the Greek government, was given access to that account, was given access to that money, because there is this thing, who knows if it's true, but the IMF, if Greece didn't pay the IMF, then the Greek people would realize that not paying the IMF is not a big deal. Nothing will happen. The country cannot default because it's not in the IMF in the IMF rules. Like, when a country doesn't pay, it has about 90 days to pay. It gives it 90 days. It's the IMF is not under the loan agreement. So if a country fails to pay an installment, it's not default. It's okay. The IMF gives it another 90 days, and so on and so forth. But apparently the IMF didn't want the Greek people to see that, if Greece doesn't pay the IMF, nothing happens. So it just basically pretended it helped Greece not default on its installment, and that way the people are like, oh great, we were able to pay the IMF. But the truth is, apparently nothing whatsoever would have happened if Greece had not paid that installment. So if Greece doesn't pay any future installment to the IMF, yes, it will become, we'll get a lot of blackmail in the media and blah, blah, blah. But don't we get it already? Nothing really will happen to the people, on the contrary. So anyway, the debt is illegal anyway, and we have extensively talked about it. I'm gonna go. Hey everyone, says Dimitri, but hey Dimitri, I'm about to go. I'll see you again tomorrow in Greek, and Friday, same thing. I might have a guest, not sure yet. Trying to arrange it with him. Yeah, see you tomorrow in Greek, and Friday too. Take care, and just tell people that the IMF should be just kicked out. Tell your friends. All right. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, youtube.com/underground network. I have become so professional at that subscribing thing. Oh, don't forget to like too. All right. Take care, everyone, and see you tomorrow.